He did not have a high salary, but somehow he was becoming wealthier every month. Kenji was a young office worker in Japan, earning a modest salary. Like many people around him, he believed wealth belonged to people with better jobs, larger incomes, expensive investments, or some extraordinary opportunity. Every month his salary arrived, and every month it seemed to disappear. Rent took one part, food took another. Transportation, subscriptions, shopping, restaurants, and countless small purchases quietly took the rest. Kenji was not careless. He did not buy luxury cars or spend wildly. The problem was simpler. He rarely noticed where his money was going. Then one afternoon, a coworker with almost the same salary mentioned that he had been building savings for years. Kenji was surprised. "How?" he asked. The coworker smiled and handed him a small notebook. "Before you try to earn more money," he said, "learn where the money you already earn is going." That sentence stayed with Kenji. The notebook was connected to an old Japanese practice called Kakeibo, a method centered on consciously recording and reflecting on money. But it was not simply a collection of numbers. It asked a more uncomfortable question: why do you spend what you spend? Kenji thought the notebook would teach him how to save money. He did not realize it was about to teach him something much deeper: how to understand his habits, control his choices, and completely change his relationship with money, and quietly reshape his entire future. Kenji began watching his money carefully, but what he discovered was uncomfortable. His salary was not disappearing because of one decision. It was disappearing through dozens of tiny decisions that felt harmless. On Monday morning, he bought coffee on the way to work. It was only a few dollars. At lunch, he ordered food instead of bringing something from home. Later, he stopped at a convenience store and bought a snack he had not planned to buy. That evening, he ordered something online because it was on sale. None of these purchases felt important. That was exactly the problem. Kenji never thought, "I am wasting $8. He thought, "It is only $8. Then another purchase appeared. A subscription he barely remembered having renewed automatically. A taxi ride replaced a short train journey. A few items were added to an online shopping cart because they looked useful. One expense was a drop. But a river does not empty a tank in one dramatic moment. It empties it through thousands of drops. Kenji began to understand that his financial problem was not poverty. It was invisibility. When he paid with cash, he could physically watch his money become smaller. But now, he tapped his phone, received a notification, and continued walking. There was no emotional friction between wanting something and buying it. His bank balance still looked comfortable. So he kept spending. Then near the end of each month, the same question returned. Where did all my money go? Kenji searched his memory for one expensive purchase. There was none. No luxury vacation, no expensive watch, no major mistake. There were hundreds of unconscious choices. And that realization changed the way he looked at his notebook. The purpose was not to make him feel guilty about every coffee or restaurant meal. It was to make the invisible visible. Once he could see his habits clearly, he could decide which ones deserved his money and which ones were stealing his future. Kenji wrote his lesson at the top of the page. You cannot control money you refuse to look at. For the first time, Kenji stopped treating his money like something that simply arrived and disappeared. He began treating it like something he could consciously direct. At the beginning of each month, he sat at his desk with a simple notebook. Instead of opening an app, checking a number, and moving on with his day, he wrote everything by hand. The process felt slow, almost unnecessary at first, but that was precisely why it worked. He started with 4 questions. How much money do I have? How much do I want to save? How much must I spend? What can I improve this month? The questions seemed simple, but they forced Kenji to think before his money started moving. Until then, his financial pattern had been automatic. His salary arrived, he spent what he wanted, and whatever remained became savings. Now he reversed the order. Income save first, spend what remains. This did not mean Kenji stopped enjoying his life. He still went out with friends. He still bought things he enjoyed. He simply stopped allowing every desire to become an automatic purchase. He divided his spending into 4 broad categories: needs, wants, growth, and unexpected expenses. Needs included food, housing, transportation, and medicine. Wants included restaurants, entertainment, shopping, and other pleasures. Growth included books, courses, education, and useful skills. Unexpected expenses covered repairs, gifts, emergencies, and things he could not predict. Then Kenji began writing down every purchase. At first, it was annoying. But after several weeks, something unexpected happened. He started becoming conscious before spending. His hand would move toward his phone, ready to order something, and he would pause. "Do I actually want this?" he asked himself, "or am I simply used to buying it?" Sometimes he still bought it. Sometimes he walked away. The important change was not that Kenji suddenly became perfect with money. It was that his decisions were no longer completely automatic. The notebook had become a mirror. It did not tell him what to buy. It made him confront why he wanted to buy it. And for the first time, Kenji wasn't merely looking at his money. He was looking at his behavior. Kenji did not suddenly stop spending money. Instead, he began learning the difference between wanting something and actually needing it. One afternoon, he saw something online that he immediately wanted to buy. In the past, he would have tapped the screen, completed the payment, and forgotten about it a few days later. This time, he wrote it down. Then he waited. A day passed. The desire was still there, but it was weaker. A few more days passed, and Kenji realized he already owned something similar. He never bought it. This became his new habit. When something caught his attention, he gave himself a cooling-off period. Small purchases might wait a day. Bigger purchases could wait a week or longer. Sometimes the desire disappeared completely. Sometimes Kenji realized he had only wanted the feeling of buying something new. And sometimes, after waiting, he still wanted the item. When that happened, he could buy it without the same guilt, because the decision was no longer impulsive. He had given himself enough time to ask whether the purchase actually mattered. Slowly, another idea began changing the way Kenji lived. He became more respectful of what he already owned. He repaired his shoes instead of immediately replacing them. He took better care of his phone. He looked through his kitchen before buying more food. He used things longer and stopped treating perfectly useful possessions as disposable. This reflected an old Japanese idea often associated with the word motivational, a sense that something valuable should not be wasted. Kenji began asking a different question. Instead of "what can I buy next?" he asked, "how can I get more value from what I already have?" That question changed more than his spending. It changed his satisfaction. For years, he had believed that buying something new could make life feel better. A new shirt could create excitement. A new device could create motivation. A restaurant meal could create comfort. But the feeling often disappeared quickly. Now he discovered another kind of satisfaction: maintaining something, using it fully, repairing it, and knowing that he had not wasted what he already possessed. Consumer culture often whispers, "You need something new to feel better." Kenji was slowly discovering another possibility. Taking care of what I already have can also create satisfaction. Becoming wealthier on a small salary did not mean making life miserable. It meant removing unconscious consumption while protecting the spending that genuinely added value. But saving money was only half of Kenji's transformation. His next lesson would change what he believed about the money he saved. Kenji now had something he had never consistently had before: money left at the end of the month. But instead of simply watching the number in his account grow, he began asking a different question. What was this money supposed to do? He realized that saving was not the final destination, it was the foundation. Some money needed to protect him. He built an emergency reserve so that an unexpected repair, medical expense, or difficult month would not immediately destroy his progress. Some money was connected to longer-term goals, and some could be used to improve the person earning it. Kenji began spending carefully on things that could increase his abilities. He improved his English. He studied a professional skill. He bought useful learning materials and became more intentional about his health. These purchases felt different from his old spending. Before, money disappeared and left him with temporary excitement. Now, money was helping him build something that could remain with him. His skills improved. His communication became stronger. At work, he began handling responsibilities he once avoided. Gradually, he became more valuable, and new opportunities started appearing. His salary had not magically transformed overnight. His relationship with money had. Kenji remembered the seed he had written about in his notebook. A seed locked safely inside a box will never die, he thought, but it will never become a tree either. He understood the balance. Money should protect you, improve you, or create something for you. That did not mean taking reckless risks or believing every investment would make him rich. It meant understanding that security and growth were different purposes. A growing bank balance could provide peace of mind, but skills could increase his ability. Good decisions could create opportunities, and disciplined habits could allow small amounts to become meaningful over time. Kenji no longer looked at his account and asked only, "How much money do I have?" He began asking something deeper. What is my money helping me become? That question is worth asking yourself too. If your salary stayed exactly the same for the next 5 years, what could you change about your habits, skills, and financial decisions? Your income may have limits today, but your ability to learn, improve, and make wiser decisions does not have to remain where it is. For Kenji, that was the moment saving stopped being merely about having more money. It became about building a life in which his money had a purpose. Several years later, Kenji looked back at the person he used to be and realized that his life had changed without ever becoming flashy. His salary was not extraordinary. He never became a millionaire who drove an expensive car or showed his wealth to everyone around him. From the outside, his life looked surprisingly ordinary. But underneath that ordinary life, something powerful had changed. He controlled his spending. He had emergency savings. He had developed valuable skills. His ability to earn had improved. He made fewer impulsive purchases, and his financial goals were clearer than they had ever been. Most importantly, he had something money alone could not immediately buy: peace of mind. The old Kenji had believed, "I need to earn more before I can become wealthy." The new Kenji thought differently. "I need to become better at managing, growing, and using what I already have." That shift changed everything. He finally understood the idea of quiet wealth. Wealth does not always look wealthy. Someone can earn a huge salary and still live under constant financial pressure, because everything they earn immediately disappears. Another person can earn a modest income while steadily building savings, useful skills, and greater freedom. The difference is not always how much enters your life. Sometimes it is how much remains, how wisely it is used, and what opportunities it creates. For Kenji, the gap between income and spending became increasingly important. The wider that financial gap became, the more choices he could potentially create for himself. He could prepare for emergencies. He could invest in learning. He could plan for the future. He could make decisions without feeling trapped by every unexpected expense. And that was the deepest transformation. Kenji no longer feared every expense. He no longer used shopping to create temporary happiness. He no longer believed that a larger salary would automatically solve every financial problem. Money had stopped being something he chased, feared, or used to define himself. It had become a tool. And perhaps that is what quiet wealth really means. Not looking rich, but quietly building a life with more control, more security, and more freedom than you had yesterday. Where does your money disappear every month? How many purchases do you make without thinking? Are you saving first, or simply saving whatever remains at the end of the month? Think about your last 7 days. How many coffees, snacks, subscriptions, online purchases, restaurant meals, or small conveniences did you buy without deciding whether they were worth the money? Now ask yourself another question. What expense could you reduce without making your life miserable? You do not have to remove every pleasure from your life. The lesson is not to become afraid of spending. It is to become conscious of spending. Spend consciously, save intentionally, improve continuously. Start with a 7-day challenge. For the next week, write down every expense you make. Do not trust your memory. Put every purchase on paper, even the smallest one. Then place each expense into one of 4 categories: need, want, growth, or unexpected. At the end of 7 days, look at the page. Which expenses surprised you? Which purchases were unnecessary? Which spending actually improved your life? And where could you create a larger gap between what you earn and what you spend? You may discover that the problem was never one enormous expense. It may have been a collection of small decisions that quietly became a habit. Then create a monthly system. Decide what you want to save before the month begins. Protect essential spending. Allow reasonable enjoyment. Set something aside for growth. And remember, growth does not always mean buying something expensive. For someone learning English, growth might mean spending time with a book, practicing listening, improving vocabulary, or developing speaking ability. Every word learned, every page read, every listening session completed, and every mistake corrected can increase future capability. You may not be able to change your salary tomorrow, but you can change what you do with the salary you have today. You don't need a huge salary to begin building wealth. You need to stop losing the wealth your small salary is already capable of creating. Start small, pay attention, keep learning. Let one better decision lead to another.